Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck design video. Today I'm going to be kind of catching up. I have two decks to show here today, and another video I've been editing and I'm going to host as well. This is an updated deck list for my Chandra Fire of Kaladesh Spell-Slinger deck. Since being printed, a friend had gotten me this SDCC promo, quote unquote gotten. He picked it up with the intention of trading it to me cheap. And so I designed a deck around it to the best that I felt it could be for a multiplayer traditional EDH format. And that deck list, my original one, is a video way back. This is the current design. This design is actually not going to be around much longer. My gameplay with this is slightly strategic, and that style of playing is not something that can last with your playgroups, so I'm going to have to rebuild into something different with Chandra soon. That's actually my second video today. So for right now, I'm going to show you the deck list of what I'm currently running. There's a lot of things that's changed. This is, again, a multiplayer traditional EDH. That's the format I play. I don't play tiny leaders, and I don't do like the French rules, things like that. I built the deck the best that it can be, and relying on Chandra is essentially just not good. Chandra herself, she has very little board impact. She just doesn't tend to do much other than be a chump blocker at times or a nuisance early game. There are a few cards in this deck that help kind of bait out removal, making her seem like a threat while she's not. That is, again, a very manipulative way of playing. There are just so many different better commanders you could put in the command zone for just a better deck. But that's what this deck ended up being, because that is the best that I was able to do with Chandra. So if you are unfamiliar with what she does, she is in EDH, not good. Other formats like Standard, she has some uses. But right here in a 40 life format, using a 3 mana, 1 red for a 2/2 human shaman, that pings only players. Not that best. Even without haste, that means she has to survive a turn. When you cast a red spell, she can untap, so you could ping a player for more than one. You can redirect to planeswalkers, although that's 1 damage isn't super helpful sometimes. Again, she's more like a nuisance. If she is to do a total of 3 damage in one single turn, be it from pinging or combat or some combination of both, she would then flip. She would become a planeswalker, still with a converted mana cost of 3, mind you. But even as her planeswalker, Chandra the Roaring Flame, very underwhelming in terms of power, very little board impact. The +1 is to shock a player, -2 is to shock a creature, -7 is to give all of your opponents an emblem where they get lightning bolted on the upkeep. You can, of course, try to abuse the emblem, making copies of the emblem and damage doubling, whatnot. That's a very far-fetched goal. Making a commander deck where you rely on ultimating your general, or ultimating a planeswalker. It's never going to be a reliable commander deck. So again, that's a lofty goal, and this can paint removal targets on her, so hopefully the rest of my tech can go and skate by unnoticed. Let's set Chandra over here, and I'll tell you what this deck is trying to do, and I'll point out what tech works with her and what I've felt has actually been worth including. There is a forum on mtg-salvation under the Commander Multiplayer tab, where I have kept a dialogue of recent gameplay and F&M gameplay where we have an EDH Whatnot weekly, where I've shown how this deck has typically panned out. But in short, a Spell-Slinger deck, throw out a couple of red herrings, build up big mana, burn for X spells. So to do that, we have a couple techie cards, very few creatures in this deck. Which ones were worth keeping? Obviously Dualcaster, because it is a copy effect. We may use this for our big X spells. Burnished Hart and Solemn are there just for ramp. We need a lot of mountains. This is, if you're familiar with my Latoya video, again, that's kind of the approach this deck needs. It needs big mana, big X spells, and so it needs all the mana it can get. Latoya is, of course, a strictly better general than Chandra, since she herself can be the win condition, and oftentimes is. Shard Phoenix is more of a Rattlesnake Assort card. There's a Repercussions in the deck, and that can combo very nicely with this right here. Tahngarth is, of course, one of the better control elements of the deck. He can be creature removal and a vigilant attacker all at once. A lot better if you have equipment. Duplicant is probably our best exile spot removal for a creature that's not a big X spell. Hoard-Smelter is, again, a semi-rattlesnake effect, something that makes people not want to play out big scary artifacts or bait out removal for this before they take out something else of mine, because it just stops so many other things. Inferno Titan is an offensive creature in the deck. He is great at whittling down people's life totals. Knollspine is there just to try and refill our hand. This is actually this would have been the next card I would have cut for more on theme or tech card. This deck, when I'm doing big damage, it's because I'm tapping out to do a spell. I don't have the mana to cast a 7 mana costing dragon. So he would technically be the biggest next cut. Thunder Dragon is in here over the Helion, because a flying body is typically safer and better at keeping a planeswalker safe. Spawn of Thraxes is a pseudo game-ending card. This is just fun to get a usually just big punch on someone's life total. Making copies with Kiki with this is obviously better, but that's not what this deck does. Bogardan Hellkite is again a pseudo-control-ish type of creature that can also act as removal at perfect times. And the big creature of the deck is Cozy. He's not meant to be a win condition, although of course a big Eldrazi may end up being the win condition. So let's set these guys over here. There is a plethora of spells. Again, this is a Spell-Slinger deck, kind of more so than my Latoya deck is. Latoya is essentially herself the possible win condition. This deck has to rely on more shenanigans in spell form. An instant repeatable buyback artifact destruction is great. Radiate is a gimmick card that is oftentimes very dangerous. If I'm going to do a big X spell in multiplayer, I need to make sure that my life total is higher than everyone else's, and this has backfired quite a few times because one person may be able to counter their copy of the spell and kill everyone else and get myself super low. At the other times, this can just completely win you games out of nowhere. Just don't cast this on a Warp World because you will make everyone want to punch you in the face. Commune with Lava is the best big pseudo-draw spell that we can get that's not double-sided like a Wheel of Fortune effect. Exiling, and you can do this on either your main phase and have it for a secondary turn if you need to do it early, maybe for landfall, or you can do it at the end of someone else's turn and untap and go crazy with like a mana doubler. We have Reverberate and Reiterate for copying spells. Again, Reverberate is probably our better one here. This is used usually on the opponent's spells, so I can pseudo-ramp with their stuff too. We have 3 active treason effects. Instant speed ones are the best because they can act as pseudo-fog. They can remove someone else's blocker while someone's attacking you, or there's just a lot of utility here. Instant speed ones are the only ones worth running in my opinion. This one's great because you can also fling their creatures. Vorticizing hits permanent, so you can of course take planeswalkers, you can take someone's strip mine and destroy someone else's lands. Carbonize is a card I get people just think is stupid. I honestly love this card. It's overcosted for what it does. It does 3 damage, but it has a potential to exile. I know Lightning Bolt is 2 mana cheaper and does the same thing most of the time, but exiling a problem card that is repeatedly recurred like a Prophet of Kruphix is more, I prefer this. Burn Away is a good way of getting just rid of a graveyard. Again, we're going for late game. We don't want to give people too much of a chance to recur their own stuff. Ravaging Blaze is the most recent inclusion. This replaced... what did this replace? It replaced something soon. Essentially because it's an instant X spell where I can also redirect to a if I have Spellmaster, I can redirect to a Planeswalker as well. It is on theme with Chandra, that's cute, but this is here because it's an instant speed X spell that will most likely be hitting a player. Spellmaster is a very easy thing to obtain. Comet Storm is I'm still not a fan. I know Comet Storm is the epitome of X spells for multiplayer games. I just think because it's a mythic, it really shouldn't be a mythic at this quality. There's really very little that stands us apart from other X spells of this caliber. Multi-kicker's nifty. I don't know. I have a personal opinion about this card. For this deck, what this deck is trying to do, it does a very good job though. And Starstorm is just an X spell that hits creatures. Again, I don't have a lot of creatures. Best thing I can do is try to keep yours off the board to keep me safe and so I can stay alive longer. This is a rare one because this hits flyers. Most of the X spells in Burn in red, mono red, will hit non-flyers like a Magma Quake, a Molten Disaster, Earthquake, things like that. Speaking of which, let's go on to the Sorceries. The other card I have in here, the last one for Artifact Destruction, is Vandal Blast. It's just a generic card. Any mono red deck typically wants to run this. Usually if you're just splashing red in your EDH, you still have this in there because it's a one-sided artifact removal. I am still running Ruination. I am doing 30 basic lands out of my 37 lands. So this is a usually one-sided thing. This can make people concede if you rush out to it fast. Usually this is more or less our tempo spell against specific decks. It's never guarantee. This, of course, means I am running very few utility lands, and some people do not like that idea. We have the Wheels of Wheel of Fortune and Reforge the Soul. This is, again, a crappy Collector's Edition one. I am still after one more Judge, or whatever the promo foil one is. There's no Wheel of Fate in here. There's not enough time, and giving the opponents time to scalp their hands hurts. We do have some recovery in the form of Past in Flames and Recoup. This one gets us Sorceries. Both these themselves have Flashback. This is usually seen in some kind of combo where you have mana generation spells. But this is just, both these are utility enough where I can recur a big X spell for my deck. Giving an X spell Flashback, I can still pay X. And that's, again, what this deck needs to do. This can be useful to also help reset a wheel, just about any spell I need. Here are the game ender spells. These are typically targeting an opponent just to kill them. I like the ones that also have the effect of exiling a creature if I need them to. So these all exile a creature if the creature were to die. But they are typically used to doom a player. This one is best out of all because it usually cannot be countered. Molten Disaster also has a whimsical cannot be countered. This is another one that may be hitting me for a whole bunch. Earthquake is the original form of Molten Disaster with just less mana. Again, non-flyers and players, I will be hitting myself. Anger of the Gods is fantastic. It's another exile spell. It gets out a lot of weenies and deals with a lot of problem creatures. Volcanic Vision is another recurring element where I can pop a previously used spell back to hand and usually board wipe at the same time. Very expensive spell. This was on the cutting post on and off because it's 7 mana. But being that it is technically a replacement itself, and I have the variable board wipe coming up, it gives me a lot of utility. The issue is, of course, running into a whole bunch of X spells in my graveyard, and I burn everything for 1 or 2. That isn't good. But, of course, if there's something like a Blasphemous Act in my graveyard, then that's just fantastic. I'm building up board wipe after board wipe. And the last one is All is Dust, just for generic removal, our only way of dealing with enchantments and planeswalkers here. Talking of enchantments, there are only 2 in this deck. The best one in the entire deck, just like Latoya, is Repercussions. My big X spells that target your creature can reflect up to the opponent. This is a really good effect at lowering everyone's life total throughout the game, because combat damage becomes a very tricky thing, sometimes irrelevant to block. Something like this, since it impacts everybody's creatures, and I'm doing a burn deck, this is one of the absolute most important cards for this style of deck. Past that, we also have Outpost Siege. Card draw, that pseudo card draw that red gets. And there is, of course, the same 4 planeswalkers I originally ran. We have Chandra, her 0 ability gives us card advantage. Koth is another big mana sink. It's a repeatable mana ability if we can keep him safe. He's usually held up for late game just so I can get a big burst from his native 2. And then we have Karn and Ujin for exiling permanents and problems. And of course, both of these themselves can lock out a game if it's down to one opponent and they can't deal with it. And we are off to the non-land permanents, which would be the artifacts. There's not a whole bunch. In this deck, there's very little aggro ramps, sort of things. Like we have a Soul Ring and a Wayfarer's Bauble. I love this because it couldn't replace itself. There is a Valakut in this deck, so this can act as a 2-mana lightning bolt essentially while ramping. Then we have the Gauntlet effects, like well, I'm not running all of them, there's no Mana Flare, things like this, but just the ones that help Mono Red the best. These also pump Mono Red's creatures, that doesn't really matter a whole bunch. Technically, one of these out could make Chandra just swing for 3 damage and auto flip, but these are here just to generate lots and lots of mana. The one effect in here, the most important effect for Chandra, like there's all the thematic ones, like the ones, well, there's the Pyromancer's Gauntlet. That's thematic, and it does help her burn for 4. That's honestly just really not good enough. The Pyromancer's Goggles is perfectly on theme, and you would think Pyromancer's Goggles would be in this deck because it's it's a mana rock that doubles spells. Being that it's 5 mana, and it comes out so slow, it's either going to be on the turn I want to copy a spell, which is then taking up 5 of the mana I need, or it's going to come out earlier and I hope it lasts for a turn. That is such an obvious target. It is more of a threatening target than these 2 are, and since I can never guarantee the spell in hand, it's sometimes just a waste. It's a big card waste. These 2, although, this one does not look threatening, and it is a very slight incremental damage. Like this one, I don't think anyone's actually wanted to deal with it, although it has helped Chandra deal quite a bit of damage over a long period of time. This one is better because while I can double Chandra's ability, there's other things in the deck and can double too. There's the Planeswalkers, there's Burnished Hart, there's the Mirrored Landscape Land, even Train Generator. There's a lot of things that this works with. This is a generically good card. If your EDH deck has a general that can make use of this, and maybe about 10 cards, it should definitely be in your deck. Then we go on here, we have a generic removal. This was going to become a Perilous Vault. I do not have enough to go around, because Perilous Vault itself can be immediately used on the same turn if you have mana, and it's exile instead of destroying. Although this does save our Planeswalker. Top is there for smoothing. Again, I don't like normally running top, except unless the deck absolutely needs it. This is the sort of deck that absolutely needs top. Expedition map is there to get our Valakut or Train Generator. Or actually, I'm running Bozeshu in this deck, which I don't normally run that spell unless it's a competitive 1v1 sort of deck. This deck needed that card enough that I've actually used this to get it a couple times. Journeyer's Kite is for the long haul, just guaranteeing landfalls past turn 3. Course of Portal is our sort of Phyrexian Arena effect. The best thing we can try to do is to keep using the card draw off this and hope people don't blow up the world. You may need to blow up the world, and you can politically play that, but we really would prefer to have the cards. Then we have some more card advantage here, and a very slow Mind's Eye, and Staff of Nin as the final one. Again, multiplayer games, these two are very slow to come out. They are usually dealt with quickly, but hopefully you at least replace themselves once. And again, we are running, get out of here, 37 lands total, 7 non-basics, Ancient Tomb, and a Temple for some double mana off the lands. Thawing Glaciers is really good for, again, a long haul, a long-term game where we want more permanence. This is, again, something you can double up with the Rings of Brighthearth, really good. You can double with the Rings of Brighthearth, really good. You can double the Rings of Brighthearth, really good. Again, if you have this and like a Journeyer's Kite out, you can just play the passive game and ramp. It costs a lot of mana, but you are ramping every single turn without card disadvantage. Valakut is a possible win more in many games. A lot of people will have a bad opinion of Valakut if they run too many non-basics or in 2-color decks. In my opinion, that's the obvious mistake of running too many non-basics or running it in 2-color deck. Unless you're maybe playing like Borigoramos, whatever that dude is. If you're running like 30 basics, Valakut is fantastic. I also know a lot of people like copying this with Thespian Stage, Vesuva effects. In my personal opinion, unless you have a way of ramping that out very quickly and you ramp a lot of mountains really quickly, that's not going to be fast enough to be effective in most metas, at least in my meta. And there's the Bozeshu. As I said, this is necessary. A lot of my spells, the Banefire is the one that can naturally not be well, I guess Molten Disaster too sometimes. But giving a next spell uncounterability is usually all it takes to lock out a game against many people. Then of course we're just on the giant pile of mountains. These got pulled out of a earlier deck that I had recently sold and taken apart. I honestly hate these lands. I am excited about the new Return of Zendikar lands coming out. I like the artwork on the one that's got like the rocks flowing down this way. And all those new quote-unquote dual lands, like the Tango lands, where it takes 2 to tango. Those are nifty too. That has me excited. But this is the last current list of my Chandra deck that is actually trying to win. I'm about to record another video of what this deck will shortly become, which is more of a thematic deck. And I know as of late my last few videos have been pretty whimsical in terms of power level. I've been showing a lot of like silly and weak and underwhelming decks. I do have some stronger decks I've been playing, I just haven't had a chance to refine them, or actually, again, I've been offline for a while. So I will actually record some more videos, hopefully show you guys something a bit stronger soon. But until then, any ideas always welcome. If not, have a great day.